Hi, my name is Bhavini.
Hi, my name is Ritu. Welcome to our podcast, Hush Talk, where we're going to have the chats that were once hushed. And our first topic today, we're going to talk about emotional unavailability. Bhavini, what are some stories that you have about emotional unavailability growing up, or sometimes in your marriage, or growing up in childhood with friendships? What would you say are some of the examples that you have?
So, first of all, I want to just welcome everybody. It's really great to be here and excited to talk about this topic because I feel like across cultures, we don't really talk about certain things, especially for me growing up. One of the things that really stick out in my head was just showing your affection. Like my mom, she showed it in different ways, through food, just taking care of us. Of course, I always know that my mom loves me and everything, but the words were never said. So, emotionally, I feel like I never heard the words like I love you, I care about you, and we do it so differently now with our kids, where we're constantly telling our kids how much we love them and how much we care about them, as I'm sure you do as well with
Yes.
your kids as well.
Yes.
And
We
so
overdo it sometimes,
we
actually,
overdo it.
with our
I
kids.
feel like they don't want to hear it anymore,
Yeah. Yeah.
but we didn't hear that when we were growing up, right?
Right.
And I kind of broke that cycle with my mom over time, by just telling her that I love you, and I said
Yes.
it so many times before she actually started saying it back to me. So, again, like I said, it's not that, um, you know,
And sometimes I feel like sometimes we want to overcompensate that the fact that you said we don't get it. We never got it from our parents. We never got that hug that we wanted. And oh my God, I craved. Sometimes I really just, especially coming home from school, and I didn't have such a good day. My day didn't go good in the class, and I got picked on by one of the kids in the school bus, which was pretty regular because I grew up in the 80s. In South Jersey, there wasn't many colored people in that school or in my area at that time. And, I wanted to come home and I wanted to say, this happened. And I want to tell you, this was my story and I'm hurt. And I want you to, have my back about it. And I don't think we ever got that open dialogue, like what you're saying, to conversate with them, or that question that how was your day, or why do you feel a certain way, or why do you look like you're irritated or angry or scared, and so they never had questioned it. They and giving them benefit of the doubt, their parents had never done that to them. So in that sense, they had shown their love, their affection, their care in many different ways, like cooking us great dinners and taking us to simple places, picnics, right? What were some of the things that?
Absolutely. So, some of the things that I remember similar to yours in high school, I don't think I ever talked to my parents about like what went on during the
No.
day. If, somebody picked on me, you kind of just went about your day.
Yeah.
And, obviously coming from a different country to here,
Yeah.
my mom, she worked most of her day. So like I
Yeah.
hardly ever saw her to even discuss it. But even when
Yeah.
she was around, it never crossed my mind to even think like, oh, let me talk to my mom about this. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
we were never used to such conversations, right?
Right.
Because we were always kind of, I remember growing up in India. I came here when I was 11. So growing up in India, it was almost like, you were seen but not heard, if that makes sense, and not in a bad way, of course. You played with your friends, you did your things, but you never really talked about anything. Again, similar to what you said was, like, how was your day? What did you do in school?
Yeah.
So some of those things, I definitely have gone through it as well. And we do it so differently with our kids nowadays,
Yes,
where we
yes,
constantly, the minute they get in the car, I'm like, how was your day? And
yeah.
sometimes I'll get like my kids saying, not now, like, you know, so it's definitely different for sure.
Yes.
But
And
Go
And I
ahead.
think similarly, I grew up, I was born and brought up in New Jersey. So, I very Americanized, and we also had to have those Indian roots because our parents had just immigrated in the 70s. So they still had that culture, that tradition, that upbringing, the way of parenting was still similar to what they dealt with, back in India. And I'm sure many other people could relate to our conversation. It doesn't have to be people who are only of Indian origin. It could be families that are immigrant families from different parts of the world. It could actually be families from the US, American families that weren't really brought up speaking how they felt or what they thought or what exactly they were, if they were dealing with anxiety or depression. We didn't even hear about those words at
Oh
that
no,
time.
absolutely not. Like that was
So,
not even a thing. Like I
right,
remember like back in the days, I didn't even know what depression was, sadly.
right, yeah,
And because I feel like back home, things have changed over time, of course, but
yeah,
back home, I feel like nobody ever talked about depression.
yeah,
Nobody ever really got into such thing as anxiety. Like I don't think that
yes,
they even knew what anxiety was. Like you felt it, but
yes,
again, like it was never talked about, right?
right,
Or it wasn't that big of a deal to even get into it.
yes.
So, those are some of the things definitely were not talked about.
Yes, and you're
So,
and you're right. I had my uncle had depression for a very long period of time. Nobody ever commented on, how he got it, what does he do to help himself, or what are some other ways that he can, help cure it. Those things were just never expressed or talked about. Um,
So no, I agree with you, right? So similar to that is, even growing up here and knowing about depression, but because we never really discussed about it, we never really talked about it,
yeah,
and being comfortable talking about it so much, right?
right,
I went through postpartum depression. Never knew I had it until like now, because I feel like honestly, part of it is being aware of your emotions, right? Which we never talked about that, and we never discussed emotionally, how do you feel, that it's okay to feel this way. So some of those things were never discussed when I was growing up. So even when I went through postpartum depression, I just kind of went through the motion, not knowing I was going through it. And now, like looking back, because I feel like over the years, I've just become more aware of my own emotions and just, more aware of what's going on with my own self. I, looking back, I was definitely had postpartum depression and just never talked about it with anyone.
and then and I agree. I think there's a lot of women still, even up to this date, because I am a pediatrician, so I see this in a lot of women who had just given birth to their babies. They don't have many people that they can speak to, and sometimes, culturally, they're just not used to speaking about it, so they don't know they're able to do that. They're not aware of the fact that there is help for them. But going back to the topic of emotional unavailability, we were saying that we dealt with that lack of affection, or at least the thought that we wanted that physical affection, that emotional nurturing, that emotional attention, which now we're giving to our kids. So the newer generation is getting a lot more of, how was your day?
More than they want.
Oh yeah, more than they want and more than we can handle as well too, because of us being, able to have that space open for them to talk about this, we're able to hear them out as well too. So when they do talk a lot about their feelings and their thoughts and different ideas, and sometimes I'm taken aback, even though in the profession we're taught to kind of deal with conversating and understanding and managing these things. But as a parent, just talking about it, your subconscious always goes back to your own childhood, which was just what we were talking in the beginning, is we were just never taught to, we were just
Oh,
taught that,
absolutely.
just suck it up and go and deal with it. Or, there's no reason to cry, just, wipe your tears and get on with it. Or, you just,
Suck it up.
is it suck it up and just get strong. And a lot of it is something that we heard growing up, so you just learn to kind of go into your own shell and deal with your emotions in your own self. So through life and through adult life, I don't know about you, but I've learned that whenever I have an emotion that's nothing related to being talkative and happy, and you know this about me, because whenever I'm feeling down or whenever I'm feeling anxious, I think I withdraw and I isolate myself. And this very classic way I respond to it now, because of the emotional unavailability. Because the only way I feel that I can respond to it or understand what I'm going through is when I isolate myself. And I have to work through those emotions myself. Is it healthy? I don't know.
Well, I feel like, you really have to, as we grow and go through our journey, I feel like we really have to take it upon ourselves to kind of make those changes, right? Because we have dealt with it so much in our younger age where it wasn't available to us. Being aware of yourself, learning to draw those boundaries, and also, at the same time, I feel like ask for help when you need it, right? Because we were never taught that before either, that it's okay to ask for help. It's not showing weakness by asking for help. So I think we try to be so strong and try to deal with everything by ourselves because that's how we were raised.
Uh, yeah,
Sometimes it's actually pretty okay,
yeah,
to say, hey, call up your girlfriend and be like, I need to go out. I need a moment, and I've done that, through my own experiences I went through, and I was never like that before. I never really reached out to anyone to talk about my problems. You do here and there. I'm not saying I never talked about my problems, but I never really went into details about my life with anyone before. And it's not because I didn't want to or anything. It was just kind of like, no need to, right? Until like, a tragedy did happen in my life. And one of my girlfriend, my best friend, she's like my soul sister. She was always available for me. And, she kept telling me, and there were times 9:30 at night, I'm like, I need to get a drink. I just need to
yeah,
meet up and just, talk about stuff. And we did that, and it's amazing that sometimes just venting, helps a lot,
yeah.
and it doesn't show your weakness. It just, you just need to do that to kind of get your emotions out.
And I think that I agree with you. Sometimes when I'm not able to handle things, or we're not able to handle our own issues within ourselves or resolve things within ourselves, because I feel that nobody knows you better than yourself.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
although the emotions are heavy and there are different perspectives that you look for, and I think when it gets beyond to a point where you're not able to handle it, for sure, reach out to a friend, go out for a drink, seek therapy, because that was another thing that we'll talk later on, about depression and mental health disorders. But at that point, therapy was something that was just looked at as, you're odd if you were to go ahead and seek someone to help you through your feelings and thoughts and whatnot. And I've definitely gotten therapy throughout my adult life to help me channel my emotions, why I feel certain ways, and how to kind of just untangle those thoughts and help you sort through them so you can come to a different conclusion. And it does help having a third person to go through it, because the real life or the examples and the perspective that they bring might be completely different, that you might not even have looked at or thought of when, from your angle. And it blows your mind how much it helps you to talk to people, just going off of what you said with reaching out to a friend and just kind of having a good time. I like that.
So I agree with you, right? And one of the things that I think it helped me, obviously talking to people helps a tremendous amount.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I have learned that, knowing yourself is the
Yes.
biggest thing, right?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
I feel like
Yes.
when you don't know yourself, it's easy to lose yourself with
Yeah.
others,
Yeah.
and to rely, so much on other people's perspective and what gels with you, what doesn't, what you like, how
Right.
you like it, right? It's very different. So
Yes.
it's easy to get swayed away,
Yeah.
unless you have that right person in your life to
Yes.
guide you and wants
Who
the
knows
best
you?
for you, who knows
Who
you,
knows you? Yes.
absolutely. And I'm sure you can agree, like I have so many friends, I have a lot of family,
Yeah.
but not every one of them you would talk to you about your personal stuff, right? They're
Right.
very selective few people that you would go for an advice. And
Yeah.
often, I've heard from different people where, they'll talk to me, and I always tell them, listen, pick one or two people that you really trust, that knows you, that wants the best for you, to give you, to when you're seeking for advice, right?
Right.
Because unless you don't know yourself, it's very hard to kind of get swayed in 10 different ways because you get 10 different opinions.
And I
Um,
and I like that. I like that you pick a friend that is unbiased with their
oh,
with their
absolutely.
with their opinions. That they're
Oh,
not gonna just yes you for everything, or just say,
mm-hmm.
you're my friend, I got your back, we're gonna do whatever you want, or we're gonna go back, I'm gonna back you up with whatever you did. Although I do like it when there's certain friends or certain people who say, I don't really think what you did was the right thing. I would have done it this way, or I would have thought about it this way, or I would have said this instead. And I really appreciate people who call me out and have the guts to actually do it, because I'm a very
Well, then that's your
strong-minded.
true friend, right?
Yeah,
That is your true friend
yeah,
in all trueness, of being a good friend is that they can call you out when you are
yeah,
doing something wrong. It's not all happy and, so
yeah.
bad, good, bad, and ugly, right? They should be able to tell you how it is to your face. So,
That's exactly right. And especially if you are a very strong-minded woman who is intimidating. And I think, sometimes, I don't know whether through life's journeys and through all the difficulties we face, we just become that, a little bit intimidating as women, because we're both very independent. In many ways, and we know what we want. We're very confident, and so not many people have that ability to say, "Hey, I would do this, or I would think about this." And like I said, I appreciate that so much from people when they're able to do that. So I definitely think that it's good to get help, for that emotional availability that we had handled in childhood, to kind of come out of it and untangle ourselves with, like we were saying, whether it's knowing yourself, grounding yourself, therapy, good friends, surrounding yourself against,
it's
around
important,
that
very important.
positivity. It's very important.
Yep. And
Yep.
and one of the things, when you talk to people, they
Yeah.
have gone through similar things, as I'm sure all of you have, dealt with
Yeah.
it at one point or the other in your life. But
Yeah.
at the same time, when you go through this process of, emotions where it wasn't talked about and now you're talking about it, right? So it's different for everyone, where like for myself, I can say, I've kind of was aware of it, have changed it for myself, changed it for my family, right?
Yeah.
And then there are few that would be like, hey, listen, this happened in my life, and I was never was given love and well me, and it never changes, because it's all about this happened to me, right? So getting past that, and making that choice for yourself to say, okay, this is where I'm going to change, because it wasn't done with me going forward,
I'm
you
gonna
have
make
your
that.
choices in your life to do what you
Yes.
want to do, right?
Yes.
And until and unless you don't change it for yourself, let me tell you, no
Yeah.
one's gonna come and do it for you.
Yes.
So,
You have to
so
be pretty awoke. Not many people are able to see, not many people come out of the box to say, okay, this was what I really lacked in, and this is
mhm.
something I want to change in myself. How many people do you know that actually take that moment to say, okay, this is how I'm going to be different, just like you said, and this is how I'm going to show up. So maybe it was a good thing that sometimes, same thing in dating, it is a good thing to date people that might not be so good for you, because then you get more clear to know who you want to date. And I think that comes with time, right?
It does. It
And I
does.
think in this day and age, there's many people that you have to go through.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
I hear stories for sure. And there are some interesting stories about those,
Yes.
which we'll,
Yeah.
we'll definitely talk about it at different
Yeah.
time. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you do have to make that choice. You do have to take accountability for yourself, and willing to do that.
Yeah.
So, it's very important. It's almost like life is kind of like a river if you think about it. You
Yeah.
can either go with the flow,
Yeah.
and it's great because it's very natural, and
Yeah.
everything flows very naturally, or you can go against it and you'll feel difficulties and challenges.
Yes.
But you really have to balance it, knowing when to go with it and when to
Yeah.
anchor yourself, right?
Yeah.
So you really have to be aware of that and
Yeah.
not
And
get
you have to be able to let go enough to be able to flow with that river and not
right.
control it so much too. And I think this topic about letting go and just flowing is definitely something that I struggle with a lot, but it is something that you just have to be aware of and know, and not be so hard on yourself, and understand there are some days that, I am going to go back to being how I was, or how I thought, or how I was brought up, but it's okay, and be kind to yourself and say, all right, now I caught myself and now I want to move forward. And I think that's what life is about. That, yeah, I do have obstacles. I do have faults. I'm not perfect. I'm human after all. Eventually, we will be dealing with robots, but as of right now, we're all human. So we will have these obstacles, difficulties, and it's so much more easier said than done. But
Well,
as long as,
with difficulties,
yeah,
well, you talked about the three big D's that can be thrown at you, right?
yes.
So tell us a little bit about that.
So the first one was so the first one we wanted to talk about was divorce, and I think the person who's going to talk about that is me, because I did get divorced in my mid 30s. It is something that I didn't expect. It was not something I went going forward. Growing up, we didn't have many people um with who did get divorced, so it was more of a taboo topic, that if you were to get divorced, the feeling that you got, or the feeling I got after I got divorced, was almost like the character in the Scarlet Letter, where she had the A on her chest, and the whole community and the whole society knew that she had done something wrong. And so there's extreme guilt that you carry, that I feel like I still sometimes have to remind myself that it's not so much that feeling that I want to carry over. It's the feeling of a new beginning that I really want to carry over, when you go through that divorce. And I think, especially when you have children, and I think many other people can relate to this as well. Many of us make as much attempts as you can to salvage the relationship, make sure that you've tried and attempted whatever you can to make sure that you collectively stay together as a family. But at some point, especially when there are other things involved, and when there's other abuse involved, and or there's other factors that are involved in it, there are no choices, especially when it's harming a child, or it's harming the child's mental health. And I still remember um, the pivotal moment that I had, for the divorce. There was actually two. One was I didn't even know divorce was something I could consider. I thought, okay, I had picked somebody who wasn't didn't have the best nature, and it was working out that it was mentally draining. It was mentally draining my son too at that time, and I was in a very low point of my life, and I think I remember telling you the story once that I had a lady who had come in who turned out to be a friend later on into the urgent care that I was working at, and it was very unconventional. And she had seen I'd never seen her before. She brought her in her son for the first time. She did not go to the practice, and she wasn't going to go there afterwards. And after that appointment, she gave me her card and she said, we get together for playing cards, and us women from the community in the area, we do this once a month. It would be nice if you join. And like I said, I was not doing so good at that point. I was, in a very bad state mentally, but I couldn't express it to anyone. I couldn't share it with anyone. Again, like I said, we were talking about the emotional unavailability. You're not able to communicate it. You don't want to have that shame that, oh wow, the family's not doing good. Why is the family not doing good? Why, it
And I
just
agree with you because I
right.
feel like, back again, there are people in my family that are divorced.
Yeah.
Never knew they were divorced because I don't know
Yes.
for some reason why is it so bad to mention that someone was divorced, right?
Yeah.
I feel like you said, it's, sometimes things don't work out for one
Right.
reason or the other. And if that's the choice you had to make, you make it and you start with a new beginning,
Yes.
and you want what's best for you, and if you have kids, then for
And
your
your
kids,
child. Yes.
so I don't know why it's such a taboo even to say, hey, your aunt was at one point divorced.
Right.
It's almost like, let's not talk about it, it won't ever happen again,
Right. And
it's,
just put it
it's kind of
underneath the
like one of
rug.
those. Yeah, and
And that's
I
what
don't
most
know
people
why they
do.
don't talk about it. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's so odd, but yeah, I definitely agree with you.
And so when I went to that card game that she invited me to, we all introduced ourselves at that table, and everybody went around saying, I'm such and such, and this is this is where I live, this is what I do. And all the way at the end of the table was a girl who said, okay, this is my name, and I'm divorced, I'm remarried, and I have a child from the second marriage. She seemed extremely happy, bubbly, vivacious, and I was so, I guess she had a very magnetic energy that, I had to kind of bend my neck and my whole body to see who was that woman who said that. Because usually nobody says, oh, I'm divorced and, I got
Of
remarried.
course.
It's not something that we talked about. At least it's
No.
something that's hushed, right? That's one of the
Oh,
topics that's hushed in
yes.
our families, and many others as well. So when she said that, it was intriguing. And so she gave me that hope that, okay, there is a life after divorce. There is another life you can have, and you can be happy after it as well.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
that was very pivotal. And then, the second story was, there was a therapist we had gone for couple counseling, and there was many others previous to that. Nothing really resonated. And just like all therapists, not all are one size fits all. You have to see which one understands you culturally and understands you and your story and resonates with you. And so she asked me, why are you with your husband? And I said, well, I have my son, and, my son is this old, and I want to keep the family together. She said, no, no, no. She said, why are you with your husband? And at that time, going through as much that I had gone through the marriage, I couldn't think of a single reason of why I was there and why I was still married. And it was very pivotal at that moment, but it was definitely something that, helped me go through the divorce and, come out now completely at least stable and got through it really well. So I was really appreciative of those two stories that I had.
Yeah, no, I agree with you that it's just it's very it's very tough to go through something like that, especially when it's not the norm per se, amongst the family. And, to even bring that up to your family, to
And
say, I can't even imagine you telling your parents, that
right.
are, very traditional,
Oh
to
yeah.
say, I'm gonna,
Yeah.
get divorced.
Yeah.
It's like finding your own person, right? Like
Right.
back in the days, to even find someone on your own was
Yeah.
like, like, what, you're
Yeah.
gonna you're gonna find someone on your own, because
Right.
traditionally, like, I mean, back in the days, it was love marriages more
Arranged
than
marriages.
arranged marriages, excuse me, sorry.
Yeah.
Arranged marriages, right? And then as time went on, things changed.
Right.
So even, for some reason, I had the guts to tell my mom in high school, I'm gonna find someone on my own, and when I do, I'll introduce that to you when I'm ready. And she looked at me like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Yeah.
And my mom is like the type of person who doesn't say much, and she doesn't like go back and forth arguing with you. So she just kind of looked at me and was thinking probably like, uh-huh, sure. you know, and she said, that's fine. She's like, listen, when you do find that person, I want you to come and tell me yourself. I don't want to hear it from others, which I appreciate it. Believe it
Yeah.
or not, I think she kind of came around, after being here for so many years. I think it was kind of like she saw how things were, and, kind of took that change, embraced that change, because, I lost my dad when I was, a year old. So, my mom, she was, I think she was like 28 when my dad passed away.
And
And
so this is the other D in our title, which is deaths. So you want to talk
yes.
about that.
So, yeah, so my dad passed away when I was a year old. And, we never really talked about it. Like, we were kind of told like what happened, but I was so young, like, and when I, grew up, and I asked my mom, I'm like, what happened? And she's like, oh, he was sick, and that was it. And, even for her, to talk about if she wanted to get remarried, right? If she wanted to find someone, forget about getting married,
And
maybe a companion.
how old
Um,
was your mom when
my mom was
he passed
28.
away?
She was
Wow.
28. So, and she had me and my sister.
Wow.
And, nobody in my family, as far as I remember, said, hey, you should really think about yourself. And she never thought about it, because again, culturally, you just, that was how it was back then. So, she didn't think about it. Nobody in our family took a stand to say, hey, she's so young, like she should really find a companion, she should have
Right.
someone. And to this day, my mom is not married, doesn't have
Yeah.
a companion. And, my sister and I told her when we were old enough to understand that she needed
Yeah.
someone, we told her, Mom, why don't you find someone? And she's
Yeah.
like, nah, it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
I'm good. But it's just one of those things that just never talked about it, never, you know, I, and even if she were to talk to another male back then, you would be
Oh, it's a
judged.
really big deal. I mean, back then,
You
it's a
would be
big,
judged, like,
right.
what's going on?
But B, I think that's a big thing even now. I mean, I think you think it was an issue. I think after my divorce, if I were to go on a date or meet a guy or post a guy, oh, I would be talked about in many different rooms and many different cliques about, okay, wow, she's very fast, or she must have been the reason for the divorce, and
Yeah,
this is too
no, and
early. There's a lot of
absolutely.
judgment in our
So there's a lot of
families.
stuff. Yeah, there's a
Yeah,
lot of stuff that,
right.
we can go on and on and on,
Yeah.
about these things. I think it's,
Yeah,
endless stuff we can talk about.
yeah.
But, thank you for joining us. It was really good having you, and we will see you guys soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.